Opening greetings and an all-new context. Hey everyone! Before I dive into today's story, let me set the scene for you in a way that puts you right in the middle of the action. Picture Colorado, a state whose dramatic scenery ranges from sweeping plains to the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, where crisp mountain air blends with the energy of lively college towns and the promise of untold adventure. It's here, amidst this landscape brimming with both natural beauty and lurking peril, that our unexpected tale takes root. Now this isn't just any everyday anecdote. What I'm about to recount isn't fiction cooked up late at night. It's inspired by real-life discussions and mysterious incidents that still send chills down the spines of local residents and outdoor enthusiasts. We're talking about an enigma that unfolded not decades ago in a forgotten corner, but right here, in contemporary America. A land known for its spirit of discovery and the kind of youthful boldness that sometimes tiptoes right up to the line between courage and recklessness. Imagine a collective of inquisitive college students, the kind who live for late-night debates and wild plans, hailing from different universities within the greater Denver-Boulder metro. Driven partly by Instagram-worthy wanderlust and partly by that particular urge to push boundaries, they set their sights on a forbidden destination. An underground cave system tucked inside a federally protected preserve, off-limits not just to the curious, but even to most scientists. Their impulsive decision to venture into a site steeped in warning signs and local folklore speaks volumes about the intoxicating mix of freedom and invincibility that college life in the US can breed. They weren't thrill-seekers in the extreme sports sense. They were curious souls, kids standing at the threshold of adulthood, eager to leave their mark or, at the very least, discover something no one else had Instagrammed before them. But before you start picturing picturesque group selfies with stalactites, remember, the details of what happened next would scatter across social media, ignite message boards, and spawn a tempest of rumors and speculation. Through the haze of clickbait articles and cryptic online posts, one harrowing truth echoed. Someone from their party disappeared without a trace, transforming a night of adventure into a bewildering nightmare that neither authorities nor internet sleuths could entirely unravel. So grab a cup of coffee and buckle up. What transpired in those dark, twisting tunnels beneath Colorado isn't just a cautionary tale about curiosity and risk, it's a window into how quickly thrill-seeking can slip into tragedy, and how even in a hyper-connected world, some mysteries refuse to yield their secrets. The place and its allure. Now, let's paint a vibrant picture of the location that drew so much fascination, a place that seems as if it was designed to entice the adventurous, the restless, and the insatiably curious. Our story unfolds on the outskirts of Boulder, Colorado, nestled at the intersection of dramatic mountain slopes and vast swaths of wild woodland. Boulder isn't just a college town, it's got this unique, almost magnetic blend of bohemian city energy and untamed wilderness. Here, challenging hiking trails are just a stone's throw from microbreweries and indie bookstores. Legends about the mountains and their secrets get quietly passed around campfires just beyond the city's twinkling lights. The very spot our student group was drawn to lies within a federally protected preserve, an area that, to most, is merely a blurred segment on a topographic map or an off-limits zone on the National Park Service's website. But to the handful of risk-takers, it's an irresistible blank space. A question mark daring someone young and bold to fill it in. This isn't the sort of place you'd see on glossy postcards or travelogues. There are no souvenir kiosks, no guided tours, no well-trodden paths winding safely through the trees. Instead, the preserve shields an underworld of hidden entrances, sudden drops, and geological marvels that are as dangerous as they are rare. Boulder's underground cave systems have long captured the imaginations of university students, amateur spelunkers, and folklore enthusiasts. Stories of ghostly lights, uncharted tunnels snaking endlessly beneath the earth, and chilling disappearances have swirled for decades, kept alive by both veteran locals and eager newcomers. It's the kind of place where scientific exploration and urban legend overlap, a living tapestry of myth and measurable danger. The major caves that are open to public tours operate under strict safety regulations and constant supervision. But stories whisper of other chambers, untouched by infrastructure, where even most scientists are denied permission to enter for safety and conservation reasons. It's exactly these forbidden depths that beckon to our protagonists. The knowledge that no GPS watch or harmless Instagram check-in could really track what might happen down there only fueled their curiosity. The cave system they targeted, later identified as the notorious Carver's Den, was a literal black spot, cordoned off by federal law, surrounded by warning placards, absent from most maps, and closely monitored from above by park rangers. But for some, barriers are invitations. And so, on that ill-fated day, the irresistible pull of adventure, secrecy, and the allure of untold stories drew them into the dark. The mystique of Boulder's forbidden underground, the way its silence seemed to hum with potential secrets, was too powerful to resist. What they didn't realize was that this place, for all its allure, had a way of reminding those who trespassed just how small and fragile they truly were. Chilling incident unfolds. There are moments in life when time seems to freeze, where seconds stretch out absurdly, trapping everyone into a suspended state of disbelief. That's exactly what happened in the bowels of Carver's den, just as the day was beginning to dwindle into evening. Picture this. The group of 5 friends, their voices echoing off the stone in jokes and nervous laughter, were just starting to come down from the adrenaline of the initial descent. They marveled at the eerie beauty around them. Rippling reflections from their flashlights danced on the jagged cavern walls, their boots splashed through puddles on the uneven ground, and distant drips of water provided a steady, ghostly percussion. But then, in the span of a handful of heartbeats, everything twisted. As they approached the underground pool, a black, glassy surface so perfectly still it seemed to swallow light, they paused, awestruck at its size and depth. Tensions, excitement, fatigue, and a bit of bravado were all jumbled up in the heavy cave air. Jackson Miller, always the most daring of the crew, was the first to approach the edge, peering into the vast, inky darkness. Nobody expected what happened next. Without much warning, Jackson, impulsive, confident, perhaps wanting to prove something, shrugged off his hesitation, and waded into the freezing water. He left his jacket behind, but the rest, a flashlight strapped to his head, no safety vest, no lifeline, followed him, as if drawn by some silent dare. The cave was so silent you could have heard his teeth chatter, but he said nothing, cutting an almost heroic figure against the muted beam of his headlamp. He slid into the water, pushing off from the edge. The others called to him, their voices taut but tinged with expectation. 1 minute he was a ghostly outline drifting further from the bank. The next there was an unnatural stillness. No splash, no shout, no signs of distress, just the faintest ripple, and then nothing. All the light in the cave seemed to lose its edge at once. The group's shouts quickly grew frantic, echoing, multiplying until they disintegrated into helpless silence. The feeling that filled the cave was not just fear but pure, unfiltered dread. Was he playing a prank? Did he surface behind a jagged rock, holding his breath to spook them? Seconds ticked by, then minutes. With each passing moment, anxiety bloomed into panic. Flashlights stabbed across the water's black surface, searching for so much as a bobbing hand or a gasp for air. But Jackson had vanished with a finality that logic struggled to accept. It was a horror that transformed adventure into nightmare in the blink of an eye. And as the echoes of their frantic yells faded into the thick oppressive dark, the group came to a harrowing realization. Sometimes the line between thrill and danger isn't blurred, it simply disappears. Composition of the exploratory group. The makeup of any exploratory team has an undeniable influence on the decisions made and the risks taken, and in this case, the dynamic among the group members played a crucial role in the events that would unfold. This group consisted of 5 college students from 2 different universities in the greater Denver-Boulder area of Colorado. None of them were professional spelunkers. Instead, they were a patchwork of academic backgrounds, shared curiosity, and the kind of friendship that thrives in late-night study sessions, heated campus debates, and spontaneous weekend trips. Leading the charge was Jackson Miller, a third-year engineering student at the University of Colorado Boulder, known among his peers as both headstrong and ambitious. He gravitated toward pushing boundaries, not just on grades or internships, but on life experiences. Alongside him was Emily Carter, a senior majoring in environmental science and a steadying presence in the squad, her caution and practicality often balancing out Jackson's enthusiasm. Josh Lee, hailing from the same university, brought a creative spark as a journalism major. His role was usually that of the documentarian, always eager to chronicle their escapades. He was the one with the GoPro and a steady stream of witty commentary. The group's diversity was enhanced by Sarah Morgan, visiting from a liberal arts college in downtown Denver, whose penchant for folklore and passion for local legends had initially sparked talk of the forbidden Carver's den among her friends. Rounding out the team was Daniel Brooks, a pre-med sophomore known for being both resourceful and surprisingly brave, who had a deep respect for rules yet nonetheless couldn't resist a promising adventure when peer pressure struck the right chord. The group dynamic shifted throughout the day. Confidence surged as they navigated easy terrain, but disagreement surfaced when the cave's hazards became more apparent. The group's different strengths and weaknesses created both moments of synergy and flashes of discord. Each member contributed a unique skill. Emily's environmental sense warned of potential hazards. Daniel's first aid kit was never far. Sarah's stories prodded them deeper. Jackson's determination kept them moving. And Josh's recordings provided a safety net and source of levity. Notably, despite being an eclectic bunch, their shared desire for discovery banished hesitation, at least in the beginning. The absence of an official leader meant the group decisions were often a matter of consensus, though Jackson's decisive personality tended to tip scales. Their mutual trust, cemented over months of shared experiences, emboldened them to enter forbidden territory. And it was this cohesion, some might say collective overconfidence, that propelled them toward the fateful events inside the cave. In retrospect, the very bonds that gave them courage may have also blinded them to the full extent of the danger ahead. The solitary solo. The perilous cave terrain. Describing the internal geography of Carver's den is an exercise in respecting nature's most formidable designs. Imagine a subterranean labyrinth stretching nearly a mile, its tunnels twisting unpredictably through layers of ancient stone, each bend promising a fresh obstacle to navigation. The entrance, unmarked and half-hidden beneath scraggly underbrush, immediately gives way to steep, narrow passageways that force even seasoned explorers to crawl on hands and knees, their bodies scraping against cool, damp rock. Deeper inside, the path becomes increasingly treacherous. Jagged stalactites loom from above, some as sharp as knives and positioned so closely together that a careless movement could result in injury. Vertical drops appear with little warning, some plummeting over 30 feet straight down, masked by clusters of loose scree that threaten to shift underfoot. If you look up, the ceiling often vanishes into blackness. If you look down, sudden gaps yawn wide enough to swallow a person whole. As you push onward, humidity rises and the air thickens with a mineral tang. Pools of icy, stagnant water gather in natural basins along the route, obscuring submerged hazards like slippery ledges or unexpected sinkholes. Some corridors dead-end into jagged rockfall, while others split off without pattern, their labyrinthine nature making disorientation almost inevitable. All the while the temperature plummets the deeper one ventures, hovering just above freezing in the cave's core, making every breath visible and every muscle tense with cold. The final obstacle is the most striking, an immense subterranean lake, its waters inky and motionless, spanning over 60 feet across and plunging over 100 feet deep at its center. Echoes from any sound vanish into the darkness, and the only source of illumination is whatever light explorers bring with them. Flashlights whose beams struggle against the consuming black. Along the rocky shore, jagged boulders and unstable scree hem travelers in, making footing treacherous. In spots the ceiling swoops perilously low, forcing adventurers to crouch near the water's edge or risk slipping into the chilling depths. Navigation in Carver's den is not just a matter of physical strength or daring, but of sheer survival instinct. Even experienced cavers acknowledge the overwhelming sense of vulnerability the space inspires, a truth no Instagram photo or secondhand campfire tale can fully convey. To step into the heart of this cave is to put oneself at the mercy of a landscape shaped by eons of geologic force, one that's indifferent to human ambition and merciless to carelessness or hubris. Time of disappearance. If you could pause reality and step into that heavy, electrically charged silence, the moment just before the world turns upside down, being with the group at the underground lake in Carver's den would be exactly that. It was as if time itself was waiting to see what the next move would bring. At approximately 3 p.m., the friends arrived at the end of their harrowing underground journey. Flashes from their headlamps flickered across the smooth, obsidian surface of water that seemed endless, swallowing every beam and every echo. There was a sense of simultaneous accomplishment and dread, like reaching the end of a marathon only to peer over the edge into the unknown. No one could have predicted how quickly normalcy would collapse. According to witness accounts later pieced together by investigators and recounted during trembling retellings, the group took only a few minutes to catch their breath and take in the haunting beauty of the place. Tension mixed with awe laced every conversation as the cold seeped into their bones. Within a shockingly brief window, a seemingly mundane suggestion suddenly spiraled into irreversible action. Jackson Miller, who until that moment had been half joking about who would cross the water first, shrugged off any semblance of hesitation, and began preparing to swim. At first, no one intervened, the act unfolding so quietly, so absent of drama, that it seemed harmless. Jackson took off his backpack, left it near Emily, then methodically removed his jacket and shoes, stacking them in an organized heap as if he fully intended to finish and retrieve them. The measured way he set down his things almost lent normalcy to the moment, masking the reckless undertone. He kept only his headlamp, strapping it tight as if for a challenge, and cast a final glance back at his friends. He murmured a joke, one that didn't quite land, and with a quick, practiced movement, slid toward the water's edge where jagged rock met the liquid void. The others, caught between nerves and a sense of ceremony, watched with a mixture of concern and peer-driven anticipation. Nobody told him to stop, nobody offered a safety rope or a word of warning. Jackson stepped in with only his headlamp for company. No buoy and no backup plan. To the onlookers, it was as if they were attending a spontaneous dare rather than witnessing the first link in a chain of disaster. Jackson's entrance into the icy pool was eerily subdued. There was no dramatic splash and no last-minute hesitation. He waded in, then pushed off from the edge, his silhouette quickly losing definition in the churning murky light. In the next 10 seconds, the group called out encouragement, waiting for the familiar sound of strokes or a joking shout. But the expected noises never came. What should have been a tense but recoverable adventure became an encounter with the impossible. Jackson's headlamp flickered once and vanished beneath the surface. A crushing silence overtook the cave. Seconds stretched into disbelieving minutes. No cries for help, no visible struggle. The water, save for a few faint ripples near the edge, quickly resumed its mirror-still visage. That was it. The moment their lives drew a before and after, stamped irrevocably by a vanishing so complete it barely seemed real. When reality dawned on the group, panic erupted. But whatever had happened in those seconds where Jackson ceased to exist in their world, it was already far too late for anyone to react meaningfully. The rescue operation turns to desperation. When the call for help was finally made, what followed was a rescue mission fraught with anxiety, logistical nightmares, and gnawing uncertainty that haunted everyone involved. The sense of urgency was palpable from the first dispatch. Every second lost was like another stone added to the weight on the rescuers' chests. Yet, as the hours passed, that urgency curdled into a deep, almost collective dread, as repeated attempts to reach the missing student met one crushing setback after another. Teams specializing in cave rescues began gathering at the preserve's entrance even before the sun had risen after the incident. The first wave, 10 highly trained professionals from Boulder's Regional Rescue Unit, lugged heavy packs and portable lighting, their faces set in grim resolve as they briefed each other on protocols and hazards. But optimism soon evaporated. The cave's unforgiving layout blocked conventional access, rope lines twisted around unstable columns, freezing pools swallowed sound, and thick sediment rendered every step perilous. Each time a diver lost visibility in the ink-black water, a pit formed in every rescuer's stomach. Radio static and clipped conversations punctuated the tense hours. By the end of the first day, exhaustion and heartbreak hung thick in the air. The initial rescue team was forced to retreat, utterly spent and shaken by how little progress they had made. This only intensified the sense of futility that began to permeate the operation. Officials called in reinforcements, search and rescue volunteers, professional cave divers from across the state, and even a contingent from the National Park Service. Over the following 48 hours, the number of people combing the cave and its surroundings swelled to several dozen, and then close to 200, a silent army against the indifferent mountain. The operation evolved into shifting shifts around the clock. Teams braved the cave's near-freezing temperatures, wrestled with temperamental inflatable rafts, and faced the constant risk of rockfall or sudden flooding. Despite state-of-the-art sonar, underwater drones, and infrared cameras, the cruel silence persisted. Each negative finding, a sweep of a tunnel, a negative ping in the icy lake, landed like a gut punch. The volunteers above ground organized hot meals, fire barrels, and even a makeshift counseling tent for exhausted families clinging to the last scraps of hope. As the third day dawned cold and gray, it had become impossible to ignore what everyone feared. The cave's dangers had won. The rescue mission, once a beacon of hope and technical prowess, drifted into grim recovery mode. Despite tireless efforts, not a single trace of Jackson emerged. Not a shoe, not a thread, not a hopeful sound on the sonar. The rescuers' faces were laced with guilt and defeat as the operation wound down, each haunted by the emptiness echoing back from the cavern's heart. The cave had reclaimed its secret, leaving all involved with nothing but unanswered questions and a chilling sense of unfinished business. The baffling silence of those involved. Perhaps one of the most confounding and enduring dimensions of the entire incident is the deep, impenetrable wall of silence erected by everyone closely connected to Jackson Miller's disappearance. In most crises, especially those which capture public and media attention to this extent, it's common for the people at the center to voice their experiences, offer clarifications, or at least express some level of emotion or insight into what transpired. Here, though, an unnerving quiet descended almost immediately after the news broke. The 4 surviving friends, previously active and outspoken on social media, shut down their digital presence in the days following the tragedy. Text messages and calls from classmates, local journalists, and even university support staff were ignored. Several stopped attending classes altogether, while others provided only the most generic, rehearsed statements to law enforcement through legal representatives. Attempts by university officials to organize a campus forum or support group meeting floundered. Attendance was sparse and those who did show said little or nothing. The void left was filled by rumors, deepening the sense of mystery. It wasn't just the direct witnesses who retreated into silence. The president of the university's adventure club, rumored to have been informed of the cave expedition beforehand, likewise refused interviews and was notably absent from all related press briefings. Close acquaintances, who might have been expected to offer at least second-hand comments or context, demurred or flatly claimed ignorance. Family members, too, issued only brief, carefully worded statements through lawyers, imploring the media to respect their privacy. This orchestrated withdrawal had a chilling impact on the investigation. Detectives faced an unbreakable wall, unable to obtain fresh details or piece together a coherent timeline beyond the initial interviews taken in the immediate aftermath. Community speculation spiraled. Was this classic trauma-induced withdrawal or something more conspiratorial? Whispers suggested counseling sessions had coached the group into silence, others pointed to the possible involvement of legal advisors with vested interests. Online, this silence became a magnet for conspiracy theories and amateur sleuthing. Message boards sizzled with fanatical speculation about secret pacts, non-disclosure agreements, and covert threats. Yet, in all the cacophony, the voices that mattered most, the ones who had been in the cave, and those with insight into the group's preparations and motivations, remained stubbornly absent. The inability or unwillingness to communicate even basic feelings of grief, guilt, confusion, or closure only stoked public unease. As the months and then years slipped by, hopes for a revelation faded. Outreach from investigative journalists, renewed public appeals, and even offers of immunity failed to crack the silence. In this case, what wasn't said, what could never be coaxed from those at the heart of it all, became as central to the mystery as any concrete clue found at the scene. The enduring, unresolved hush around Carver's den suggests that sometimes, what remains unsaid defines the story every bit as much as what is revealed. The puzzling silence of all those involved. If there's a single thread that winds through the aftermath of the Carver's den incident, it's the deep, impenetrable silence clinging to everyone connected with the case. This silence, heavy and intentional, quickly became as much a part of the story as the tragedy itself. In the hours and days following the disappearance, what began as shock soon morphed into an ironclad refusal to engage. Jackson's friends, the very people who last saw him alive underground, refused interview requests from both local and national media outlets. They skipped scheduled press conferences, turned down invitations to provide official statements, and in more than one instance, ignored repeated calls from investigators once their initial reports were filed. Their collective decision to retreat from the public eye was abrupt and uniform, drawing even more attention to the chasm of information left behind. The Adventure Club at Jackson's University, previously known for its lively social media presence and open-door culture, instead locked down completely. Its president delegated all media queries to the university's general counsel. Members who had posted dispatches of recent quests suddenly scrubbed their feeds of trip photos and status updates. The club's group chat, according to leaked messages, swelled briefly with panicked speculation before going eerily dormant. To outsiders, it looked less like the expected chaos after a tragedy and more like an operation to clamp down on leaks or unwanted attention. Family members too, on both Jackson's side and among the group's parents, echoed this discretion. While there were the usual pleas for information and a handful of early interviews, most families rapidly pulled back from the spotlight, declining any comment on the advice of lawyers or simply as a measure of self-protection. For Jackson's parents, the disappearance's agony was compounded by the vacuum of communication, both with authorities and the public. Reporters' attempts to offer platforms for pleas, retrospectives, or even memorials were met with standard statements and closed doors. As the weeks turned into months, online forums and amateur sleuths filled the void with wild conjectures. Some pointed to non-disclosure agreements, possible police gag orders, or even threats, whether real or perceived. Rumors spiraled. Had the group made a pact to conceal some overlooked detail? Was the adventure club shielding itself against liability? Or did the silence mask something even darker beneath the surface? None of these theories could be confirmed, but what was undeniable was the suffocating quiet pressed down from every angle. For law enforcement and journalists alike, this wall of silence proved infuriating. Detectives, stymied by the lack of fresh leads or cooperative witnesses, had little choice but to accept that the story, at least for those closest to Jackson, had ended at the cave's rim. Members of the press, who had covered missing persons cases for decades, remarked how unusually total the blackout was in Carver's den, as if a communal decision had been made that no more words would be wasted on a wound that couldn't heal. Ultimately, the silence bred mistrust, leaving everyone, family, investigators, and the watching public, haunted by the poisonous feeling that someone, somewhere, was still holding back the one piece of truth that might bring closure. The cave swallowed more than just Jackson. It seemed to have consumed the voices of everyone left behind. Hazy technological evidence. When authorities and independent investigators began sifting through the aftermath of Jackson Miller's disappearance, the digital traces left behind quickly emerged as a focal point of growing suspicion and confusion. Unlike traditional missing person cases, this incident unfolded in the era of near-total connectivity, where every move, message, and geotag might help clarify what truly happened. Yet instead of clarity, the electronic breadcrumbs surrounding Jackson's last day seemed only to deepen the mystery, raising troubling new questions that remain unanswered even years later. First, and perhaps most haunting, was the discovery that Jackson's personal social media accounts, particularly Facebook and Instagram, underwent a series of inexplicable changes in the hours and days after he vanished. Multiple observers, including friends, digital forensics specialists, and even online sleuths, noticed that certain activity timestamps did not match the group's stated timeline. For instance, profile information and friend lists were altered, status messages were deleted, and tagged photo albums quietly disappeared from his public profiles. The chilling implication was that someone had accessed his accounts when he was presumed missing, if not worse. Investigators could never determine with certainty whether these digital footprints were left by Jackson himself, as part of a possible plan to disappear, by a peer who knew his passwords, or by a third party with more technical access or ulterior motives. Each explanation introduced unsettling new branches on the tree of suspicion. Compounding the confusion, phone records unveiled other peculiarities. There were sporadic outgoing texts and missed calls on Jackson's number after his last confirmed sighting, some sent to numbers not in his usual contact list, and some corresponding to the so-called dark minutes when the group was supposedly still inside Carver's den. Some tech-savvy observers proposed that the phone might have been manipulated away from the scene, while others argued it could be a simple signal delay in the deep underground. But when GPS logs showed brief, flickering attempts to connect with cellular towers miles away from the park during the critical period, the suspicion only thickened. Was it a malfunction, a staged digital red herring, or evidence that the phone had left the cave far earlier than believed? Emails and cloud storage activity provided another web of intrigue. Forensic examiners reported strange irregularities. Unsent drafts in Jackson's university email that referenced the end, deleted messages to unknown addresses, and files missing, or in some cases encrypted, on his personal drive. It was never made public whether the university or cloud service providers could unlock these encryptions, or whether more disturbing secrets lay behind those password-protected archives. Friends admitted they'd once set up a shared cloud folder for their cave adventures, but several key videos from the trip were corrupted or inexplicably wiped, with recovery software only able to restore fragments. Shaky, half-lit images whose contents seemed innocuous except for abrupt, unexplained glitches coinciding with the time around Jackson's disappearance. Meanwhile, metadata gleaned from group chat applications painted a similarly murky picture. Not only were there abrupt removals of chat participants and purged message histories, but, more curiously, the group's encrypted messaging app showed a string of failed login attempts and password resets following the night of the incident. No one in the group admitted to initiating these resets. The app's security logs, normally ignored, became the subject of a formal inquiry, but privacy protections, combined with vague testimony from key individuals, ultimately prevented full disclosure. The most tantalizing technological clue lay in the form of a GoPro camera recovered from Emily's pack. Its memory card, water-damaged but partially salvageable, contained scattered video clips leading up to the descent, but footage of the moment Jackson entered the water and afterwards was missing or corrupted. Several theories sprang up: accidental deletion, technical malfunction, or deliberate evidence tampering. For every claim made, technical experts seemed split on whether such gaps were even possible without human intervention. Ultimately, the patchwork of incomplete digital evidence proved as frustrating as it was provocative. Rather than illuminating the events behind Jackson Miller's vanishing, each odd edit, missing file, and phantom ping added new layers to the conspiracy theories swirling around the case. As months passed, the digital afterimage of that night has become a cautionary tale all its own, a testament to the ways modern technology can both reveal and further obscure the truth, especially when someone is determined to keep secrets buried. Unanswered theories and lingering questions. Every major unresolved case breeds its own ecosystem of theories and unanswered questions, but there's something about the disappearance at Carver's den that has pushed speculation into truly obsessive territory. Years have passed, and yet the story continues to fuel online forums, late-night TV specials, and heated debates in academic circles. What really happened that day in the deepest corner of the cave? Why has so little concrete evidence surfaced despite concentrated search and rescue efforts and seemingly endless digital scrutiny? The result is a tangle of theories, each with its own passionate camp of believers and skeptics. The most straightforward explanation, and the one favored by official reports, is the theory of accidental drowning and subsequent entrapment. According to this line, Jackson Miller entered a dangerous, freezing lake unprepared, fell victim to a sudden cramp or cold shock, and either drowned or was swept into an underwater passage. Search and rescue professionals argue that given the cave's complexity and the cavern's depth, it's plausible for a body to disappear without a trace, wedged in a tight underwater crevice or hidden beneath layers of silt. Supporters point to the lack of physical evidence, like clothing or equipment, as a painful but simple result of nature's cruelty. But for many close to the case, and certainly for most armchair detectives, such closure rings hollow. Competing theories abound, ranging from the plausible to the outlandish, each questioning either the facts themselves or the shadowy motives of those involved. One of the more persistent ideas is that the group's account contains deliberate omissions or outright fabrications. Proponents point to the inconsistencies in timelines, nervous or evasive interviews, what few occurred, and the suspicious digital footprints suggesting a cover-up, accidental or otherwise, surrounding what really unfolded at the edge of the underground lake. Some theorists have fixated on an even darker angle. What if the group's unity in the aftermath, its coordinated silence and reluctance to cooperate, masked not just guilt, but collusion in staging a disappearance? These skeptics argue that, with plenty of time inside the labyrinthine cave before authorities arrived, details could have been manipulated, equipment discarded, and evidence erased. As outlandish as it might sound, stories of out-of-the-box disappearances and staged accidents have precedent, fueling speculation that Jackson's fate was decided in secret before reaching the surface. On the fringe, conspiracy theories swirl, unanchored by solid evidence but persistent in online spaces. Some suggest Jackson engineered his own vanishing, a planned escape from his existing life orchestrated with help or conversely, to spite those closest to him. Fuel for this theory includes odd digital changes to his social profiles after the disappearance, rumors of discontent, and stories of meticulously planned disappearances pulled off by people with a similar profile. The cave's isolation would have offered both the opportunity to fake a fatal mishap and enough ambiguity to keep questions alive long after the fact. Another theory, favored in some cryptic internet circles, edges toward the paranormal. Was it possible the cave itself, rife with local legends and whispered superstitions, somehow played an active part? Missing climbers, strange lights, electronic malfunctions, and voices echoing in the dark have all been cited, painting the location as more than a backdrop, but a character in its own right. While most investigators discount these tales, it's notable how such stories tend to arise whenever circumstances defy simple explanation, adding a layer of myth to an already enigmatic tragedy. Perhaps the hardest questions are also the simplest. What emotions or group dynamics contributed to the decisions that day? Why did no one insist on safety measures or intervene when the water crossing began? Could more have been done at crucial moments? Endless debates swirl about the tunnel vision that adventurous youth sometimes fall prey to, the subtle pressures within friend groups, or the ways that fear can fracture recollections and silence voices forever. Each theory, whether grounded or fantastical, underscores the gnawing fact at the heart of this mystery. Something remains unresolved, not just about a missing young man, but about how quickly certainty vanishes in the shadows of the unknown. As the years go by, Carver's den remains unchanged, silent, and indifferent. But for everyone who witnessed, researched, or simply stumbled across the story, the case endures as a collection of haunting questions, a labyrinth of maybes, if onlys, and what truly happened down there. The longer those questions echo, the more fervently people search for a piece of truth, no matter how elusive.